Idle hands are the devil's playground. What's going on, friends? Logan Myerz here for Cinephellas.com. It's 31 Days of Horror, and tonight I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite horror flicks, horror stoner comedies from back in the 90s. I'm talking about Idle Hands, directed by Rodman Flender, came out in 1999. Film stars Devon Sawa, Seth Green, and Elden Henson, the Bash brother from Mighty Ducks, Fulton. I love this guy. He was also in Daredevil. Seth Green and Devon Sawa, you know who they are. They've been in a million things. But this is a really fantastic stoner comedy and a great film to watch during the Halloween season. I watch this every year during October, and this year I wanted to get around to talking about it. So the film's directed by Rodman Flender. They just did a 20th anniversary screening for Devon Sawa's birthday. There's like a picture of Seth Green, Devon Sawa, Elden Henson, and Rodman Flender, the 20th anniversary. I can't believe, it's been this long since this movie came out. It seems like yesterday. A lot of interesting things about this film. So in 1999, we had the Columbine school shooting. This movie was released 10 days after that shooting took place, and they pulled this movie from a lot of theaters. You know, everybody back then was blaming movies and music for all these killings and school shootings and things like that, like Marilyn Manson music. And this movie is very violent, with the killing of this guy's hand being possessed and him essentially killing people. So they didn't think it was very suitable for this time with the Columbine shootings. The setup of the film, we have Anton, played by Devon Sawa. He's the laziest stoner you'll ever meet. Definitely me in high school for sure, just stoned all the time, eating munchies, not really giving a fuck about anything but himself. He's hanging out in his house, he's out of weed. He's like, where are my parents at? He hasn't seen them in a while. He's like, oh, whatever. So he goes over to his friend's house, which is Seth Green and Elden Henson's characters. Anton goes over there, he's like in his boxers, he looks like a fucking slob. He has like his asthma inhaler, uses as a bowl, he carries around his neck. And it really sets up, their kind of friendship. He goes to pick up weed, and they're all like cracking jokes and things like that. And there's a lot of great comedy. I love Seth Green and Elden Henson's characters. Seth Green was like one of my favorite actors growing up. Loved him and Can't Hardly Wait too. And Seth Green's delivery in this movie is always like spot on. He's always like snarky and has like comebacks and witty, and he's just hilarious at the same time. And him and Elden Henson feed off one another. They're really great in this movie. So the story, we find out there's a bunch of slayings and killings in this town. It's a serial killer on the loose. Anton's parents, they don't know what happened to them. They're just kind of missing, and they eventually find out what exactly happened to them and the people in this town. Now, Idle Hands is filmed in Pasadena, California. You guys may be familiar with the original Halloween, where they filmed that in the babysitters' houses. So it's very cool that they threw that in. Rodman Flender did an excellent job kind of directing that and still having the cool houses in the background. I love the set design in this movie, like outside the houses, inside of Anton's house. I thought it looked really cool, and it had a really great Halloween atmosphere and vibe to it, just like the decorations and everything. So with Anton being the cliche stoner that doesn't give a shit about anything except getting stoned, they eventually find out what happens to his parents. They were killed, and we eventually find out that Devon Sawa, or Anton, is the killer due to his idle hand, his possessed hand. The cops show up at Anton's house, and he's like hanging out, and he has like the needle that he's like knitting, and he like puts it through the guy's head. Really great practical effects in this movie. There's CGI as well. And the practical effects definitely stand out in this film. 20 years later, they still look pretty good. With Anton having this idle hand, he accidentally kills his two friends, Seth Green and Elden Henson's characters. Really great scenes. One's, Seth Green has a bottle on his head, and again, practical effects look really fantastic. It looks so real. And then Elden Henson's character gets his head cut off, so that's pretty cool. And then his head falls off, and you can see CGI, but it looks really well done. So they eventually come back for some odd reason as zombies, and I don't really think they dive into that too much in the film, why these two characters are killed and come back to life. Maybe just there to torture Anton for the rest of his life, but it's cool they come back as zombies. And again, the makeup work on these two characters, them coming back to zombified teenagers, stoners, it looks really good. But we have Jessica Alba playing Molly in this film. She was only 17 back then, one of her first roles, and Anton has a huge crush on her. She has this lyric book, and she drops it. So he goes over there to introduce himself, and he looks like a hot mess, blood and sweat, and just looks like a slob, and he's trying to talk to her. And his idle hand has a mind of its own, so he has to tie it down and end up banging. But it just sets up some really shitty jokes and one-liners, but it really works at the same time. It was really cool seeing a young Jessica Alba play this character. and, you know, Molly and Anton having this relationship throughout the film. So Vivica Fox's character shows up in this movie. She's on the hunt for this possessed hand, and she comes across, you know, like Anton's metalhead neighbor, and they have this really great dialogue in the film. They're on the hunt trying to find out who's killing all these people, who has the idle hand, and eventually, you know, they figure that out. But Vivica Fox is really badass in this movie. I haven't seen her in too much lately. I'm not sure if she's still acting, but she was really great. And she was a really big part of Idle Hands. I loved her character in this movie. Her hanging out with Anton's neighbor, Randy, the metalhead. He's always like jamming Motley Crue. Shout at the devil, and shout. He's got like the big fucking Ford truck and driving around. Metalhead, he has like a bunch of necklaces on. He reminded me of like every 90s bully in high school for sure. Like just the way he looked, his hair, his outfit, his truck. Reminded me a lot of like assholes in high school, and I thought it was really funny at the same time. A few other aspects that I loved about this film, we had the offspring that plays at the Halloween dance in the film, and like the idle hand comes in, like rips off Dexter's scalp, rips off his hair. It's really awesome. And then we have Tom DeLonge from Blink-182, which was massive back then. Before that, Matt Skiba. Tom DeLonge was like working in the fast food drive-thru. And there was a lot of great music in this movie, and I absolutely love that because of the 90s. You know, you had a lot of pop punk and punk rock music. It was really big back then. So a lot of great bands on the soundtrack. Just check that out if you have not listened to it. Eventually, they're trying to figure out like what they're going to do with this idle hand. So they think, you know, in their stone brains that they should cut off, you know, Anton's hand. So they do that, and they try to capture it in the microwave, and it escapes, and it ends up killing more people in this town. So they're on the hunt trying to find the hand. Reminded me much of Thing from the Addams Family, you know, like walking around, but it has like long fingernails and claws and shit like that. And sets up, again, more awesome kill scenes, a lot of blood in this movie. There's like buckets of blood. But leading up until the very end of the movie, that is so ridiculous and over the top and wonderful at the same time. It all comes down to them trying to find this hand, you know, Jessica Alba's character, Molly. And then you have, you know, Seth Green, Elden Henson, and Devon Sawa. They're all like together trying to find this. Molly's on top of the car, and they running out of time. You know, if they don't stop this from moving up, she's going to get smashed. So they're trying to think what they can do to stop this. And at this time, the hand, the idle hand, is in like a puppet for some odd reason. It's in a puppet. So it's like so the hand is like pushing Molly up on this like lift on top of this car. It's gonna kill her. So they're like, how do we stop this? We can't pull down the lever here. What are we gonna do? And the real hero in the movie, marijuana, comes into play. So they get all stoned and they blow it in the puppet, and it stops, you know, the car from moving upwards right before Molly's gonna get smashed. So marijuana is the hero in this movie. That's what I got out of that. With a bunch of lazy stoners, marijuana comes in at the end and saves the day. That's the lesson to be learned here, kids. So overall, I had a really great time with Idle Hands. It's one of my favorite Halloween October movies to watch. I've been watching it since it came out. It's one of my favorite Devon Sawa films for sure. He was such a heartthrob back in the day, and I loved seeing him play the stoner and then also the weirdo in SLC Punk, because he can do some different weird characters, but he did a really great job in this film. I love Seth Green, Elden Henson, Jessica Alba in this film as well. Vivica Fox, a lot of great cast. Rodman Flender did an excellent job directing this film, and I love the whole atmosphere they built for Idle Hands. You know, filming in Pasadena, the inside of the houses with all the Halloween decorations, the whole, you know, town and everything, it just felt like Halloween from 1978, which I absolutely love. 20 years later, I think this movie definitely still holds up. So if you guys have not checked out Idle Hands, I highly recommend it. I'm going to give Idle Hands from 1999 a 4 out of 5 idle hand hair pieces. So if you guys have seen Idle Hands, what did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? What's your favorite scene in the movie? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe. This is Logan Myerz signing out. My good mates up here, Seth Green, Elden Henson, and Devon Sawa. Ooh, they're all dreamy. Until the next horror movie review on 31 Days of Horror. Cheers!